My name is Avery. I'm 32 years old, the older twin by 6 minutes. I've spent my entire life learning how to be invisible next to my brother, Connor. But nothing prepared me for what happened that night. It was his engagement party. Laughter filled the room. Glasses clinking like celebration could drown the truth. Then my father stood, beaming with pride, holding an envelope in his hand. He called Connor forward. Inside the envelope was a deed. Not just any deed, my deed. The apartment I saved, repaired, rebuilt with every dollar I had. The one they'd promised would someday be mine. Applause erupted like thunder. I stood frozen, a half-empty glass trembling in my hand. And in that moment, I finally understood. In my family, love was conditional, and I had finally failed the test. Tonight, the invisible twin disappears, for good. Growing up with Connor was like living beside the sun. He got warmth. I got the shadow. When he brought home a B-, my parents threw a celebration dinner. When I made the honor roll, they said, "That's nice, Avery," and turned back to him. The message was clear before I could spell my own name. Connor mattered. I was extra. By 27, I'd built a quiet, decent life, a small marketing job, a long commute, and a fragile hope that someday my parents would finally see me. That's when Mom smiled over dinner and said, "We've been thinking. You could live in Grandma's old apartment." Her voice dripped with practiced generosity. "We'll only charge you 3/4 of the market rate." I forced a smile. It sounded like help, but felt like a test. Still, I said yes, because in my family, scraps of affection were treated like miracles. The first time I stepped inside, I almost cried. The floor sagged like a warning. The walls were stained yellow. The air smelled of rot. The kitchen hummed with dying appliances from another century. It wasn't a home. It was a grave someone forgot to bury. But I took it. I painted those walls myself. I tore up the carpet until my palms blistered. I scrubbed mold off tiles until I couldn't breathe. I slept on the floor some nights, too tired to stand. I learned which pipes leaked, which outlets sparked. Each bruise, each cut whispered, "Maybe they'll notice you now." And for a while, I believed they might. I believed effort could equal love, because when you grow up starving, even crumbs feel like a feast. They called it generosity. I called it training for survival. For the first time in my life, I felt steady. The apartment might have been falling apart, but inside those cracked walls, I could finally breathe. It was the only space that didn't echo with Connor's name. Every paycheck, I set aside a little more. Paint, tools, new fixtures. The kind of things my parents never noticed, but I cared about deeply. I worked late, came home to peeling walls and humming pipes, and turned exhaustion into progress. One weekend, I replaced every outlet myself. The electrician who inspected them later said, "You just saved this place from burning down." I smiled, not out of pride, but relief. Because for once, saving something actually mattered. My parents visited sometimes. They'd look around, nodding as if inspecting a project, not a home. "You're really fixing this place up nice," Mom said, her hand sliding along the freshly painted wall. "It's going to be worth so much more when you're done." That line, "when you're done," stuck in my chest. I wondered if they even realized what that sounded like. Dad called it checking on his investment. He'd bring Connor along sometimes, and my brother would joke about moving in after me. I'd laugh, because that's what good daughters do. But somewhere behind the smile, I started saving receipts. Every can of paint, every appliance, every contractor invoice with my name on it. Then came the day they sat on my couch, faces heavy with that particular kind of sadness parents use when they want something. "Avery, the bank's threatening to foreclose," Mom said softly. "We owe $30,000. We can't lose this place." Dad added, "Think of it as an investment. This apartment will be yours someday." Someday. That word had been dangled in front of me since childhood. Always one more sacrifice away. But I believed them. Because they were my parents. Because I wanted to. I transferred the money that same week. Every cent of my savings. My hands trembled as I clicked confirm. It felt like buying love on clearance. But I told myself this time was different. This time I wasn't the afterthought. This time I was chosen. For a few weeks, I let myself believe it. They smiled when they saw me. Dad even said, "We're proud of you, Avery." 2 words I'd waited 30 years to hear. The following month, everything seemed fine again. No mention of the debt. No mention of the future. Just silence. But sometimes silence isn't peace. It's the sound of a trap closing quietly. I kept every receipt. I just hadn't used them yet. 2 weeks later, Connor called me at work, his voice bubbling with joy. Claire and I are getting engaged. You're coming to the party, right? I smiled into the phone. Of course I would. Despite everything, he was still my brother. The night of the party was warm and gold. Laughter spilled through Claire's parents' house like champagne. Everyone looked perfect. Glasses raised, music soft, lights kind. For a moment, I let myself feel happy for him. Then my father cleared his throat. If I could have everyone's attention. The room quieted. My mom's hand rested on his arm, her smile wide and rehearsed. Diane and I want to give Connor something special, Dad said. A gift to start his new life. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out an envelope. Connor's grin told me he already knew. I felt my stomach twist before I even understood why. Dad handed him the papers. Connor unfolded them, eyes shining. The deed, he said, voice breaking. You're giving us the apartment? My father nodded proudly. It's time, son. You've earned it. Applause erupted like thunder. The sound hit me like a wave, glass clinking, laughter blooming. Someone shouted, "That's incredible!" My mom beamed. Claire's parents hugged her, and I stood frozen, half glass, half ghost. My apartment. The one I'd bled for, paid for, built from rotten to light. The one I saved with $30,000 I no longer had. I tried to breathe, but the air felt thick with perfume and lies. My Aunt Barbara's voice cut through the noise. Wait, isn't that Avery's apartment? The laughter faltered. Every head turned toward me. Dozens of faces. Curious, pitying, confused. The chandelier light caught the tears I refused to let fall. My father didn't flinch. Avery's been staying there for years. It's time she moves on. We've been generous enough, Mom added, as if I were a tenant overstaying my welcome. Heat crawled up my throat. I wanted to scream, to tell them I'd paid rent every month, that I'd rebuilt every inch of that place, that I'd saved it when they couldn't, but my voice wouldn't come. 30 years of training in silence pinned it down. Connor hugged Dad, whispering, "Thank you." Mom kissed his cheek. The crowd applauded again, louder this time. And I just stood there, invisible in plain sight. I left before dessert. No goodbyes, no explanations. Just headlights, tears, and the slow realization that the family I kept trying to belong to had just evicted me from my own life. They gave him my home. I gave myself permission. They thought silence broke me. They had no idea what silence had been training me for. That night I drove home in silence. And somewhere between the applause and the tears, something inside me snapped. Quietly, cleanly, like a wire pulled too tight. No music, no tears. Just the echo of applause that wouldn't leave my head. When I unlocked the door, I didn't see an apartment anymore. I saw evidence. 5 years of proof. Paint cans, invoices, receipts, sweat dried into the walls. They thought they could erase me, so I decided to show them what erasing looks like. I called Olivia. "Can I stay with you for a while?" "Of course, what happened?" "Later," I said. "I just need space and a moving truck." By morning, I had a plan. A precise, ruthless, beautiful plan. I started with the appliances. Every dishwasher cycle, every refrigerator hum, I'd bought them all. I called the service company. "Disconnect everything. Take it all." The man hesitated. "Ma'am, that'll leave the place empty." That's exactly the point. They arrived at 9. Unplugged the stove. Carried out the fridge. Unscrewed every light fixture I installed. The sound of drills was music. It was the sound of taking my power back. Next came the floors. The laminate I'd paid for plank by plank. They peeled it up piece by piece. Underneath, the old carpet waited, stained, brittle, forgotten. Exactly like their version of me. By sunset, the place looked the way it did when I moved in. Broken, hollow, unloved. Perfect. The movers came next. Furniture, boxes, tools, all gone. I left only dust and memories. Then I wrote a note. "I've moved out as requested. The apartment is yours now." I sealed the keys inside and sent it by courier. The next morning, my phone exploded. Calls. Texts. Voicemails full of rage. "You destroyed the apartment. You're petty, vindictive. We'll call the police." I answered once. "Go ahead. Tell them I took what I bought. And tell them about the 30,000 you stole." Silence. Then I hung up. But I wasn't finished. There was still one debt left to collect. 3 years ago, I'd loaned them my blue Honda Civic. Still registered under my name. Still insured by me. I called a tow company. "Pick it up from this address, plate KM2000. An hour later, the driver texted me a photo. The car was mine again. Mom called one last time. "You can't do this to us." "I already did," I said. "You taught me how." That night I sold the car. $12,000 in my account. Not payback, just balance. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty for taking what was mine. They stole my home. So I stole back my freedom. Revenge didn't fix the past, but it finally made space for a future I could live in. 3 weeks later, my phone rang again. Not anger this time, just the quiet after the storm. But this time, it wasn't my family. It was Claire. "Can we talk?" she asked. We met at a quiet coffee shop downtown. Her eyes were red, her smile small. "Your parents told me what happened," she said. "They said you ruined everything." I didn't respond. She took a deep breath. Then I found out the truth. She knew about the money, the renovations, the eviction, all of it. "I can't marry into that," she whispered. "Connor called you jealous, but all I see is strength." I didn't gloat. I just nodded. For the first time, someone saw me clearly. Not the forgotten twin, not the backup daughter, just Avery. A month later, the wedding was off. My Aunt Barbara said my parents were furious, spitting my name like it was a curse. I smiled. Let them. I was living in Ryan's empty house by then. No rent, no guilt, no ghosts. I filled it with the same hands that once rebuilt a broken apartment. But this time, I was building a life. Each morning felt lighter. Each silence felt earned. I bought flowers for the kitchen table, cooked breakfast just for myself, laughed at my own jokes. I stopped waiting for someone to notice I existed, because I did. Sometimes I missed the idea of family, but then I remembered how it felt to beg for love that came with conditions. Now I don't beg. I choose. I choose peace. I choose boundaries. I choose me. And if anyone calls that selfish, they've never known what it's like to survive being invisible. I didn't lose a family. I lost my jailers. And finally, I'm free. Wherever you're watching from, morning coffee or late night quiet, I'd like to hear your story in the comments. And if this one stayed with you, subscribe to join a community that believes strength isn't silence. It's knowing when to speak.